Free your mind now. Be part of People's Pan-African Parliament, the Pan-African Pyramid Debate with your speaker, Andrew Irumba Katusabe.
We'll come from a very big recess. Actually, we've been on recess since 26th of August when we last had our awards. And this is now the first one of our second session this year. My name is Andrew Irumba Katusabe, your speaker. This is your People's Pan-African Parliament that sits here in Kampala every Friday from 5 to 8 p.m. and the recorded version runs on NBC television on Saturday from 4 to 5 p.m. Ladies and gentlemen, between 1945 and 1960, Africa gained its independence, what they call independence. In the book at least we have them, and by color. You know that we are being led by Africans, by color and by books. Uganda in particular gained its independence in 1962, 9th October. And this Monday, which is celebrating 61, uninterrupted years of an independent Uganda. Now the question is, how do we deal with the total decolonization of Africa? Why are we saying we are not totally independent, or we need to decolonize Africa in totality? We know that the templates of education, the templates of politics, and democracy, and name it all, that's why we still subscribe to Choka as Uganda. We know that these templates are by our colonial masters, they are not ours. We know that every leader who wants to vie for presidency in Africa must first report to Europe. Even when you win, when you swear on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, you must be parking to go and visit your colonial masters to give you a program on how you run Africa on their behalf. So we are asking, how do we deal away with all these neo-colonial tendencies and have a totally free Africa, ladies and gentlemen? Because it's possible, but it takes a lot of effort, it takes the entire continent. So how do we, as the youth of Africa, as people of Africa, work in unison to experience total freedom in Africa? The other continents like Europe, they decide when they want to go to elections anyway, and whether they should even go for elections. For instance, the UK here, the president has been the queen until she died, and when she died, automatically the mantle went to the son. I'm sure when the son dies, the mantle will go to his son as well. So that's how they designed their democracy. Why is it that it is America here that tells Uganda that please every 5 years go for an election? How do we secede from such neo-colonialism and have a democracy model and have an Africa that can work for its people? I am not the discussant of tonight. My very first panelist will be Mr. Daniel Karama, who is the chairman of Pan-African Movement, Uganda chapter, but also a civil rights lawyer.
African Pyramid Debate.
Professor Rousseau, a French philosopher, noted one time that man is born free, but everywhere is in chains.
Man is born free. After being born free, once he touches the earth,
is in chains.
Oh, by a fellow man, I support. He's chained by a fellow man, not by God.
Yes, Speaker, sir.
Oh.
An indication therefore, dear comrades, that we are always struggling, if not amongst ourselves, then from without. Speaker, it is my observation that averagely the African continent has got about 60 years of reclaiming her independence. Of course, I put into consideration the very first ones of the late 50s, Ghana, some have said Sudan, and the ones of most recent, like the apartheid there in South Africa. and on average it's about 60 years. I'm also conscious of the fact that we were not reclaiming, we were not being given independence on a silver platter, and it had to take blood and iron in majority of the cases. It is therefore true that in the absence of direct colonialism, there was the introduction of imperialism, which in a majority of the cases has got its impact in a more subtle way, although it cannot be seen with the naked eye, especially if you do not want to investigate deeply. It's also therefore my proposal that having realized that the white man was not to leave us alone, but to leave the agents who may look like you and me to govern the country like you captured in your preamble, Mr. Speaker, it is my proposal that the following which I have put down may go a long way if we must totally decolonize the African continent. These are among some of the points we must consider, and those which are being considered must deeply be considered. Ideological revolution. Majority of our problem rotates around ability to think independently, to differentiate what is right from what is wrong, because we take it ourselves that what the white man left behind and still emphasizes through his not easily seen agencies is the correct way of running our governments and our economies. Far from it, we have realized more losses and we continue to suffer catastrophe simply because we have not identified the correct ideological path. We still fight wars on the African continent, which are directed by differences in the way we view things. There are differences in African Union. There are differences in the bodies on the African continent, such as the Pan-African Parliament, and the differences are shrouded in the Francophone and Anglophone, among others, when in actual sense there is nothing in those differences for us apart from preparing us as guardians of the imperialists. Things to do with the religion, that this one is a Muslim, this one is a Catholic, this one is an Anglican, when the initiators of the same religion have since abandoned them, have formed a crystallization upon which Africa has been prepared for further division and partition in the new format. Mr. Speaker, sir, I also pointed out education. Our education system, to say the least, is very disorganized and it only serves the interests of the colonial master who is now manifesting himself in imperialism with capitalism as its highest form. We have not developed a robust education system to address our challenges, and this is far from what Professor Edward Ezeu, a renowned sociologist of education from Uganda University, defines as education to be: the ability for society to devise ways and means of solving her own problems is what qualifies education to be education. We have trained professors, doctors, engineers in different fields, but we keep constantly not being able to solve our problems. It therefore speaks to the fact that the kind of education system which was inherited from the colonial master, which has been watered through loans and other forms of grants from the colonial master for over 60 years, is not to help us. If we must get help, therefore, we must reboot the education system or overhaul completely and adopt a new education system which solves the challenges that the African continent faces. Averagely, the trade amongst African continent, the members of the countries, is well below 20%. If we must therefore solve the crisis of trade, of exchanging goods and services amongst ourselves, we must address the concern of intra-trade. That you can roughly say there is almost no trade between Uganda and Morocco, although we are on the same continent. It is just recently that we have seen increment in the trade between East Africa and West Africa. I am glad though that we have got the regional economic bodies such as ECOWAS, such as IACA, among others, which are promoting trade. And these regional bodies are going a long way in enhancing the not far away adopted Africa Continental Free Trade Area, whose secretariat is in Ghana, and we hope that all hope is not lost as far as deepening intra-trade on the African continent is concerned, so that we do not have to be a dumping ground for the Asian and European goods, which have made our societies lazy and have made ourselves look at ourselves as not true Africans, reason being that we have got nothing to lose. Even if we fought, we don't care amongst ourselves simply because we have not developed so many centers upon which we interact. It is therefore through intra-trade, deepening intra-trade, to make sure that Africa Continental Free Trade Area, a new baby of the African Union, will go a long way in solving this malaise. It is therefore true that the statement you made in your preamble, that if you are elected as the president of any African country, you must go and pay homage and be told, if you don't know already, the blueprint of how to govern Africa. It is therefore my submission that I'm glad to see some of the changes that are rapidly happening in French West Africa. I want to believe that the kind of revolution that is happening in French West Africa is organic, and those who are carrying out the revolutions themselves are also original, and therefore we are going to have everlasting, permanent impression created on the hearts of the people. Mr. Speaker, sir, finally, a structure called civil service that was brought and left with us here on the African continent. They are the so-called technocrats in our ministries and other areas where government pays salary and they are extremely non-responsive. What they do is not so different from what the white man did. The only difference is that they are our own brothers, sisters, fathers, mothers, and that is the catastrophe. I thank you so much, Mr. Speaker.
The Pan-African Pyramid Debate.
For the visitors and the newcomers, Pan-Africanism is not about the color or race. It's about their impurity and identity. So whether black or blue or white, so long as you believe in what we believe in, then you are our comrade, you're Pan-African. So, Mr. Speaker, sir, decolonization agenda. Is it possible Africa to have total decolonization? The answer is yes and no. Yes and no. Mr. Speaker, comrades, when we are coming here to articulate these serious issues, at times we become emotional. Because imagine, Mr. Speaker, you are blaming people who left 60 years ago. 60 years ago. We have people with PhD. 60 years, you are still crying. This is your country. Still crying, lamenting. 60 years. I don't see European in your home. I don't see an American in your compound. Where is the problem? Now hear the problem. Mr. Speaker, there are three major impediments Africa's growth or development. One is poor quality of education. Two, lower levels of education. Three, the low levels of revenue mobilization, stroke collection. Now, Mr. Speaker, if you want to achieve the total decolonization, first work on the education system. Mr. Speaker, we are inheriting and continuing to have a curriculum where you have a professor lecturing European history and American history using a smartphone which is manufactured by a senior full dropout from China. He happened to be called a professor who is teaching an American history at the university, the highest institution in a country like Makerere here. Shame! A professor that cannot manufacture even a toothpick. You are calling yourself a professor. If I were the head of state, I would arrest all professors. You are not adding any value. You are not adding any value to our education system. What are you teaching us?
So, Comrade, is the problem the professor or the system that you founded?
Both.
Both of them.
Yes. Why can't you change it if you're a professor?
A professor might not have NSA.
Why can't you influence the policy? Why can't you change the law? I mean the laws. Advocacy and activism. What are you teaching? What are the contents of your lessons? These are serious matters, Mr. Speaker. Now, if you want to decolonize the entire continent, let us dissect the curriculum of what should the young Africans, what they should absorb and how at high learning institutions. Very, very important, Mr. Speaker. Now, lastly, innovation. Mr. Speaker, you remember we had the slogan here, Bonaga Kagawale. You remember? Why can't you say Bonaga Kole? Make Africa a busy continent by introducing innovations and creativity for the young people. This is very important. That's why some of us will train these guys. You see, the other time I was in Western Uganda, someone has a farm and is earning around 1 million a month, but you are not interested, you are placed to your school, instead of managing your farm, you want to go to Abu Dhabi and become a slave. What kind of generation is this? You want to go and clean the toilets abroad, and you leave your land here, which is very fertile. These are some of the things made Africa a productive continent by engaging those who have the energies. What? People are idle. Mr. Speaker, I go to the street
they did that direction. We said, where are you going? He said, I'm going this side. And you, I was going. He doesn't know even what. He said, can we go back? He says, yes. You can take even from here, you can take whoever, because they don't have any program. People from morning to morning have no program where they should go and what they should do. Make Africa a busy continent by introducing innovations that can occupy the minds and the souls of this younger generation. Thank you so much.
The Pan-African Pyramid Debate.
The entire problem stems way back to when each country attains its independence. People are going to break down functions of what problems African countries are going through today, not forgetting that these are built back on assisting. African countries have totally failed to break away from colonial systems. Now, a colonial system for all countries that were colonized is set in such a manner that your education runs a certain way, governance is in a certain way, democracy, human rights, and all that we do is built on a system. I want to tell you that when you talk about education, unless you break loose the bigger chain, the colonial system, we shall never be able to change our system. When you talk about changing democracy, unless we are bold enough to completely do away from colonial systems and redefine a system that is very suitable for African countries, we are never going to, all our efforts to decolonize are going to be very fertile. Simple statement. African questions and African solutions. If only African countries can understand that yes, we have problems, but these are African problems, they are our own. So even when we seek solutions to these problems must be African. African problems, African solutions by Africans themselves. Most of the time when we run white men's countries to big solutions, you're addressing a small problem and we go to fetch a bigger problem. Now, when things like
you fetch another
small problem, you look for solution in a white man's problem, it is very clear. You colonizers do not want to decolonize. That we should understand. So each time you have a small problem and you're looking for solutions, we come back with a bigger problem, I think.
The Pan-African Pyramid Debate.
First of all, me, I normally deal with money. Before even talking about the topic, who knows what decolonization means? We are all here talking about achieving. Do you know what you're achieving? Mr. Speaker, this is the first problem as Africans we have. We deal with what we don't know.
and we don't know what we are dealing with.
And we don't know what we are dealing with. Decolonization, I can bring it in a form of gaining back your authority or your power from the any region. When I mean the region, I mean like a country or anything. I can decolonize you when I'm white, or we are all Africans, but they can decolonize you, I myself. That's what is happening in Congo now. That's what is happening in Sudan. They are dividing themselves, but they are all Congolese. And we are saying we want to change, and we get decolonized. Really? Sorry?
Who is perpetuating that conflict?
Themselves. We ourselves.
But behind them there is somebody called a white man who has interest in Congo, who will not allow them to unite even if they want to.
He is using what?
He's using money and those.
He's using we ourselves.
Yes.
Mr. Speaker.
He's using Congolese to divide Congo.
Good. That's what I'm meaning. So, if we want to change Africa, we first change our mindsets. First, we know what we want. That's what I can tell you. love ourselves. We don't love ourselves. We as Africans. I've got a chance to travel different countries. When you go in Israel, when they know that you're from Africa, the first thing they tell you, they first teach you their history as Israelis. If you have any family member who has gone in Israel for a scholarship study, there is always the first 6 months they don't count, where they are teaching you Israel's history.
Yeah.
They are changing your mind into their history.
To suit their narrative. The first 6 months you have to study, the more they like it or not.
Here in Uganda, when you enter into a lecture room, they will start with a topic, whether they don't know whether the class is, we are really disorganized. We need to first love ourselves before we even fight something called decolonization, what we are talking about now. I'll give you another example. There is what we call Pan-Africanism movement. There is Pan-Africanism pyramid. There is Julius Nyerere. There is all those are in Uganda. We are all dealing with Pan-Africanism, but different companies. Go to Rwanda. Different organizations dealing with Pan-Africanism in Africa. Go to Kenya. There are 82 companies that they call themselves Pan-Africanists. But they don't know themselves. And they are fighting one war.
And the slogan for Pan-African is one struggle, many fronts. One struggle, many fronts.
Another thing, maybe the problem of how we can achieve our decolonization is changing our education system. How many A-level, those who studied A-level, studied geography? You studied what you call Canadian plains, right? Where are they in Uganda? Where are they in Africa? There. My P7, I got a chance, I was in China, but studying the syllabus of Uganda. But I managed to see what those people were learning. Their education system is very different. Someone just studies levels, then he just goes directly to something that will earn him. You find someone at 16 years is holding a company. In Uganda, 16 years, you're told to go and bathe before you sleep. And you want to find that kind of person? Really? So let's first love ourselves and we know what we want. When we join all of us together, we can make it. I just wanted, we change our minds as Pan-Africans.
The Pan-African Pyramid Debate.
Comrades, our biggest challenge lies within the cause, because we've been programmed to look at the problem and we are never looking at the cause of the problem. Look at the medical society. What all doctors do is to treat the problem and they never mind about the cause. That's why for over 283 years, the medical fraternity is in the business of treating the symptoms, but are never concerned about the cause of the problem. Now, when we come to our African problems, we need to first understand what are the causes of us as Africans living in this state, and we cannot move to the next level, like to liberate ourselves from those who imposed themselves onto us. Now,
before we get a solution,
yes,
we must understand the problem.
The cause
The cause
of the problem.
A good doctor will first diagnose the disease and the cause of the disease, and then will get the medicine.
Yes, he should look at the problem and then find the cause of that problem, deal with the cause, and the symptoms will disappear. We've been programmed to be captivated in intellectual entertainment, whereby we are only talking about that which has been conditioned within the framework of our mind. This mind is an instrument which improves with training. If you take a given path, you're pretty conditioned to think that this is a journey. Never. It can't be a journey. Where are you going? This is a path that you must keep on the right trajectory. So when we are programmed to move in a given direction, the mind will continue improving within that path rather than that which might liberate us. So when they came here, colonized us, imposed their system on us, now we are all channeled within that system, and the mind has picked on that intellect. That's why we have the elites who are more intellectual in talking about all these things, but they are never concerned about what is causing us to dwell so long in this too much talk, yet we don't have anything that is changing. Now, talking about the mind is an instrument which improves with consistent training. This very mind, once programmed, it forms its own space, and it wants to contain you within the known, even if it's misery. It contains you within the known misery rather than the unknown happiness. So when you can't understand the operation of your own mind, you will continue being a custodian of the very system that programs you to prolong that which enslaves us as Africans. The number one cause of our prolonged self-enslavement is within the conditioning of the mind. We must reprogram and restructure, rewire the settings of our own brains, and it begins with you, with me, with him, with everyone. The moment we connect and form a network of like-minded people, the problem shall now subside, because that which you never give your time subsides, disappears. These symptoms, too much talking in English, will disappear, because the mind will have figured out that that which I empower magnifies. Stop empowering that which continuously perpetuates self-enslavement in the African continent. And if we can get closer to observe our systems where we are living, look at our governance. Do you realize how much governance is too expensive compared to our economy? Look at our parliament here in Uganda. Do you know how much money is spent just to pay the members who represent us in our parliament? Yet, just constructing a road, go through here, Kampala, there are very many roads that are totally out of order. All that money would be diverted to cater for our structural setups. But that cannot happen because the mindset has already been conditioned to perpetuate colonial imposition rather than an Afrocentric, the Ubuntu ideology on how we can live communally rather than individually. So, brothers and sisters, I would love to submit to you, please, if we are going to decolonize Africa, it doesn't matter how long. A journey of 1,000 miles begins with one. Wonderful. So if I take the first step, that means I'm 99 steps less. I must begin taking the steps. And by me taking the step, I become a light to the others. It's like a candle that burns itself to show the rest of us where to go. So if one of us can wake up, because when we are in this asleep from here and goes away out from the other side. So we must have our own minds woken up from the deep slumber in which we have been conformed to live for all these decades. And once the mind has been filled, once the mind has reopened up, this very principle of mind to matter interaction, or mind over matter law, will work in our favor. We shall have understood how the mind works, and we can control the mind. If you want to control the world, control the mind. Now, when you control the mind, your action is become a light for the others to start copying that which you do and implement. They have taught us, I'm sorry for the lawyers, but this is to govern the entire judicial system. They have taught us that the law is the only truth, which is wrong. How can the law be the only truth? It must be the opposite. The truth must be the only law. But see how our lawyers, our legislature are all doing whatever it takes to defend the law to be the truth. Who writes the law? It's the man and woman who designed the colonial system. Those who sit somewhere and write a system to become the law in Africa. So even if it is any president, that will never happen because he is only implementing a system. He is a custodian of a system that is so much superior to his own abilities to change it. So we must all rise to the occasion and start as early as possible to realize that there is a principle they've hidden us. A principle that is universal to everyone, even here. I'm over 39 years old. And when I realized that actually my body is a colonial project, I say, come on, wake up, brother. I am a colonial project. Look at the plate, look at the foods that they serve us every day. These are all foods that have been well designed to make sure your body will get compromised and you fall sick. And once they recognize you, you will have the symptoms so that you buy their chemicals. I said, come on, I need to do something about this. I started on looking at my bed, making it a bed that can thrive within my system. Realize that this system is the only biochemical system designed from the ecosystem. You don't know even the connection between you and the ecosystem. Yet you are talking about climate, preserving the climate. You don't know the mutuality between you and the ecosystem. That's why you are eating stuff that has been made in the laboratory. I said, no more eating junk. Anything junk does not go through because you are the object of your own body. So I stopped eating junk and the system started evolving differently. Everyone here can do that. You start with the small things that you can do so that they become rituals. And when they become more of you, they manifest in you, you tap into your spirituality. When you tap into your spirituality, everything starts working in divine order. But it will never happen because the mind has been programmed to look at life in a way that you are a slave and somebody else is your master. The people who colonized us now are the ones imposing themselves on us as Africans, and we cannot free ourselves from them until when we free the conditioning of the mind so that we become a free. If we cannot work on the mind, on the properties of the mind, we shall never liberate Africa from the colonial imposition that continues over and over.
The Pan-African Pyramid Debate.
Now, the main question of the day is to first see the 61 years that Uganda is celebrating your independence, then other African countries have totally gained independence. Well, what does it take for African countries to attain the total independence? First and foremost, we have to understand what were the causes or why were African countries colonized, subjugated, and pushed into the periphery of the world. Why were African countries pushed back to where they were at first? One of the questions or one of the problems was the problem of leadership. Today, African countries cannot be totally independent because of the question of leadership. It is leadership that drives everything forward.
The Pan-African Pyramid Debate.
As lovers of history, I can see and remember vividly well on the 9th of October, on the afternoon of the 9th of October 1962, the Union Jack being lowered down and the Ugandan flag being raised. And an immense crowd rejoicing.
How old were you then? How did you see that ambient?
No, history. I say lovers of history.
You are ready for history. So,
a huge cloud of people rejoicing, and within it, they were invested in a new Uganda. But 61 years of independence, over 12 million Ugandans are still living below the poverty line. 12 million. They can't earn $1 a day. 61 years of independence. Many Ugandans cannot manage the desired 3,000 calorie intake per day. And the greatest problem we have seen is the intelligentsia, the elite. We have a breed of politicians who love themselves most than they love this country. That is the greatest problem.
The Pan-African Pyramid Debate.
I'm an African, not because I was born in Africa, but because Africa is born in me. Yeah, that is a quote from Osache for Dr. Kwame Nkrumah. So, Mr. Speaker, when you talk about neocolonialism, you see neocolonialism, for me, they equate it to slavery. They equate neocolonialism to imperialism, to oppression. It is so difficult to differentiate between these terms. So, neocolonialism is a very complex thing. Because of neocolonialism agenda, today we see tens of thousands of Africans dying in Eastern DRC on a daily basis as the colonialists continue with the process of looting and exploiting our resources. So what are we doing as Africans? What are we doing about that? Because of neocolonialism, today what is happening in schools is what we call miseducation, programming. So, Mr. Speaker, how can Africa achieve its total decolonization agenda? The very first point is emancipation from mental slavery. Emancipate yourselves from mental slavery, for none but ourselves can free our minds from Bob Marley.
The Pan-African Pyramid Debate.
I would love to attach my argument on comparison of African countries basing on their years when they got independence. For example, we have a country like South Africa, which managed to get its independence in 1994. And we have a country like DRC, which managed to get its independence in 1960. But when you compare those countries, you see that South Africa is more developed than DRC in different spheres.
Because in Congo, in DRC, there are 300 rebel groups.
Exactly. That is the point. So most of the current speakers, they would touch the argument basing on 61 years that we have as Uganda that we are not developed. I can also give you another example, like Nigeria. Nigeria also got its independence in 1960. Morocco also got its independence in 1956. But when you compare those countries, with some of the countries that got their independences before, you see that there is a difference. So we should not keep on basing on that point of the year when a country managed to get its independence. But there are some factors that we can consider that they can manage to transform a country socially, economically, and politically. For example, like education system. Education system in most of developing countries, we normally get concerned on theory. But I think what can transform us is to get education system which is based on practicals and research. Then another thing, it's about the political system. Political systems in developing countries, or what we can call developed countries, they are democratic. As you know that democracy fosters development, innovation, and invasion among its nationals. But when you go to countries that have autocratic rule, though in Africa, most of countries we claim that we have democracy, but we are under autocratic rule. And we know that autocracy fires corruption and poverty. I think there all of us we can agree on that.
Thank you.
Then from that point, as I conclude,
Because you must.
there is what we call economy. We have to build economy such that our economy is not surging. Economy is something that can make our country or that can make our nationals to take our levels of democracy, to take our levels of economy. Because even when we say that we have to do a research-based education, and we know that economy is not well, we shall be having experts in our countries, but they will be taken to other countries that are more developed. And that, it will mean that in Uganda or in other countries, we shall be having experts from other countries, which has been a problem causing close to repatriation. I beg to submit.
The Pan-African Pyramid Debate.
We cannot talk about Pan-Africanism and the problems of Africa without talking about Dr. Kwame Nkrumah. I want to quote Marcus Garvey, one of the fathers of Pan-Africanism. He says that a people that do not know their history, their culture, and their past are like a tree without roots. Ladies and gentlemen, if we are to talk about the real problems of Africa and how we can improve Africa, we cannot talk about Uganda. It's a district. We must talk about Africa as a whole, Africa as a nation, in what I call, and many of you could call, African nationalism. Uganda's independence, and many of those countries that got independence in the 60s, were lies. We did not have anything such as an independence. Otherwise, we would be free. We would not be having this conversation right now, and I'll tell you the two solutions. One of my solutions is economic freedom. There is no independence without economic freedom. You cannot talk without money. Even in African culture, you cannot suggest if you do not have money. If we unionize as Africa, if we come together, if we bargain with Russia, if we bargain with the United States, as Africa, we have a bigger bargaining power. If we unionize, we have money, we can talk, we have a higher GDP. Ladies and gentlemen, if the river reaches a sea, it loses its name. If we unite, we become an ocean. If we stay as single nations, the ones like Uganda, trying to ask themselves what has happened after 61 years. We are rivers. Ladies and gentlemen, we may talk about independence today, but we are not independent until we can speak one voice, until we erased and eliminated all artificial borders by the colonizer. And there is just one way to do that. My dear speaker, let me tell these people, we must pick up arms and fight radically and unite Africa. We must stop this cause. We shall talk until our grandkids hear these conversations. Our grandfathers fought, Dr. Kwame Nkrumah fought, and he allowed us to attack with arms if the states may fail us. Thank you, dear speaker.
The Pan-African Pyramid Debate.
Ladies and gentlemen, here, Pan-Africanism is a very big question to answer. Pan-Africanism on African unity, as the gentleman has stated, Kwame Nkrumah, the issue of unity is not an issue that can be solved at a one time. It failed when Africa was looking for independence, like how we are seated like this. Kwame Nkrumah suggested that as we are seated like this, let us all gather all what we have
and unite. But there was a disagreement. People wanted to keep their individual states. Therefore, that's the question we are still addressing up to now. I will not go back into that. We as the youth, I would like to quote one quote from Che Guevara, that we should defend our homeland, maybe we die. At this time, when you see the influx of the youth to the outside countries trying to gamble their life, it is because of the economic situation in their home countries and also the instability that they are facing. Therefore, Uganda and Africa, which are going to face in the near future, where the people who would be building a very strong foundation for Africa, now they are running to the Western countries. Therefore, there are some worries. Therefore, I focus on my point. I don't want to take much time. That we should focus on investment, on the specific needs, but not on the entitlement.
The Pan-African Pyramid Debate.
First of all, young people in Africa, we doubt our capabilities. We doubt that we can effect change. You know, we have the inner force. I remember when we were at the award giving gala, Bishop Maponga made a statement, and within the way he was articulating the issues, he was showing us that the power lies within us, within our veins, but we don't want to realize that we can affect this change. Thus, being vulnerable for waiting for students, for waiting to be given, for waiting. We are always waiting because that's what is in our mentality. We should believe that if one youth, two youths, or four youths come together with an ideology, they can at least by themselves get some money and make this ideology be a reality. We should not doubt our capabilities. For example, my brother Silivano had a dream of being the field president of Makerere University. He did sit back, but he moved forward with the population of students he had. That is a zeal of Africans. And that is what our four grandfathers had in their veins, that they didn't fear to start and they didn't fear to move distances. Another point to give, the Ubuntu mentality is long gone and forgotten in Africa. The Ubuntu whereby I am because we are. Right now we are in individualism, both in political spheres, organizational spheres, and everywhere we go. Last month I was in Nairobi for the Africa Climate Summit. A lot of presidents, the UN General Secretary General was there, and a lot of people, but everyone was pushing towards his own end. How will I gain? And President Kagame, I got very well, he made a statement and said that Africa is the liberator of the world. For example, if we speak about carbon, the carbon tax and everything, Africa emits only 3% or less of the carbon to the air. But these other people, they emit a lot of carbon, hence creating the climate crisis in the world. And then he posed the question to the UN Secretary General, who gives you the authority, you Western countries, to emit all that? Are you God? It means we have the strength, but you don't believe that we have the strength. And the young people of Africa, I call upon you wherever you are, that this is our time. My comrade, my colleague, Michael, spoke about something. He elaborated very well that our four grandfathers did their part. Some fought for the independence. Some fought for good constitutions. Now what are you doing? Only following skirts of young ladies and following sports is the general duty of the day for the young people. Can't we be visionaries enough so that our names could be written on the boards of Africa and the actualization of a strong Africa and the actualization of a strong human being race of the great, because recently even the President William Ruto, again in that same conference, he told the whites that the oldest remains of human beings were found in Nairobi, Kenya. It means the world belongs to us. We should not doubt our capabilities. We should move forward, and lastly, our governments should think that they should invest in young people, because China is investing in their young people, whereas in our kindergarten they are teaching our children, oh God, our Father in heaven, whatever. When in Kenya, when in China, they are teaching the young kids how to make phones and other things. Our government should think forward in investing in young ideologies, because we are in an era where young people should take over and bring solutions that will affect their children to come. I beg to submit.
The Pan-African Pyramid Debate.
Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen, who have been here physically at Fairway Hotel. Those of you who followed us on our line, my name is Andrew Irumba. I say thank you.
Free your mind now. Be part of People's Pan-African Parliament, the Pan-African Pyramid Debate, with your speaker, Andrew Irumba